There are other terms that are thrown sometimes in what looks like interchangeably. A founder, a CEO. What do they mean? Do they mean the same thing? Let's find out. In a previous session, we have talked about the difference between innovation, invention, startups, MSMEs. In this session, let's talk about a founder and a CEO. When we talk about a founder, we're talking about a person or one of the people who create and establishes a startup, a company. So if you are creating or you're among the first people who are creating a startup, and if you don't understand the definition of a startup, you can just check the previous session. Then we call you a founder. Why? Because you're founding, you're creating. A founder is an originator of the business idea. A founder is the person who initially sat in a lab, came up with this new unique idea or design, or is part of the team that came up with the original branding or the original marketing idea. We call you a founder. You are responsible for bringing the initial vision to life at the very start. So founders typically start the business. They conceive the idea, develop the idea, and take that idea to the market. They take the first steps to launch the idea to the market. They are there when they receive feedback and improve on the idea. They take the early risks. Founders often invest their own time, money, and resources to get the business off the ground, often without a guarantee that this company will even work. They shape the culture of the company. Every company, every organization you go to, even if you're an employee, has its own different culture. There are organizations that have an Ubuntu culture. A founder is part of creating or shaping that culture at the very onset. A founder may or may not stay involved in the company. Some founders remain actively involved in the company after it has worked. Some founders, after the idea has launched and is making sense to the market, at that point they decide to leave and join a new venture again from the start. For example, we have two people, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. These two people were the founders of Apple. They started at the very start, the design, the branding, the taking it to the market, taking early risks, shaping the culture. These two are the founders of Apple. So what then do we mean by a CEO? A CEO is an employee of a company. They are often the highest ranking executive in a company. They are responsible for making day-to-day corporate decisions, managing day-to-day operations, and ensuring that the company achieves its goals, often, of course, driving towards the vision and the mission. So the CEO typically leads the company, oversees the overall strategy, vision, and just the execution of the business. A CEO reports to the board, acts as the bridge between the company's operation and the board of directors. They manage resources. They represent the company. They are the face of the company, interacting with stakeholders, investors, and the media. A CEO may or may not be a founder. A CEO may have been originally part of the founding team at the start, or they just could be an employee that was hired after the company took off. For example, right now, Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple, but he's not a founder of Apple. That was Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. I hope you now understand the difference between a founder and a CEO. What does it mean for you to be a startup founder? Because it's very critical. And if you're following along this pathway, we're expecting that you'll be a startup founder. You already understand what a startup means and what a founder means. So, what are some of the characteristics that you need to have as a startup founder? You need to be a visionary thinker. A startup founder needs to see opportunities where others see obstacles. Where others see problems, you see opportunities to come up with something new and take over that market. That is a key characteristic of a startup founder. You need to be passionate and self-driven, that you are willing to work tirelessly and make it a reality, motivated by a strong sense of purpose and commitment. Starting something new from scratch is daunting task. It requires will, it requires consistency and a ton of work. You need to have that. You need to have a high risk appetite because coming up with something new or something that not a lot of people are doing is taking risk. It's investing time and money on something that you're not very sure that it will work. Founders should be willing to take risks, whether financially, personally, or even professionally. Some of the best founders I've seen here that we all know of, some of them quit very high paying jobs. Some of them left universities and colleges for a future that was not certain. They were willing to risk it all to grow a certain idea. You need to be resilient. You need to be able to persevere. Founders face rejection. They must be resilient even when they face setbacks. Such is life anyway, that at some time life throws curveballs at you. And as much as in creating a startup, also in your life, you need to be very resilient and perseverant. A founder needs to be creative and innovative, that you need to think outside the box, not afraid to challenge the status quo. You need to be adaptable. Founders must be flexible and willing to pivot. If something is not working, you need to be able to change and pivot on the fly. You need some leadership skills because often you find that you are the one leading a team. When you start employing, you're going to be the leader. You need to have good leadership skills. You need to be able to listen, take feedback, and at some times make tough decisions. You need to be resourceful. Look, at the start, when you're starting something new, you don't have a lot of resources. Some resources are not even within your scope. You need to be able to make the most with the limited resources that are available to you. Whether it is funding, whether it is time, or it's even talent, you need to make the most of the limited resources that you have. You need to have networking and communication skills. Often, you need to convince people that your idea will work. You need to communicate your idea in a clear manner. Invite people to work with you, to rally behind you. You need to have some good communication skills. You need to have a long-term focus, not just short-term gains. You should be committed to the long-term success of the startup, even if it means sacrificing short-term gains or stability. So some of the roles for you is that you need to be an idea generator, a problem solver, a decision maker, a fundraiser, a team builder. You have sometimes to play all these roles at the same time, and that is okay. Most of the people who have gone this journey before you have had to play all of these roles at the same time. In the next session, we'll talk about what it really takes for you to come up with a startup.